In 2007, Nokia controlled 40% of the entire global smartphone market. By 2013, it was basically zero. This wasn't just a bad luck. This wasn't a recession. This was something far more brutal and honestly a kind of their own fault. How Nokia lost everything. To understand the fall, you have to feel the height. Nokia wasn't just a phone company. In the late 90s and early 2000s, Nokia was phones, full stop. They started as a paper mill in Finland in 1865. A paper mill, then rubber boots, then cables. Then somehow they became the most valuable company in all of Europe. Nokia's 3310 wasn't just a product, it became a cultural artifact. People said it could survive a nuclear blast. There were memes before memes existed. That phone was indestructible, and so was the company, or so everyone thought. By 2000, Nokia's market cap hit $250 billion. Finland's entire GDP at that time was around $130 billion. Nokia was literally worth more than their own country. So what went wrong? January 9th, 2007, Steve Jobs walked on stage in a black turtleneck and said 7 words that would haunt Nokia forever. Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone. You knew what Nokia's internal response was? Executives reportedly laughed. One engineer later said they thought the iPhone was niche, too expensive, too limited. And technically, they weren't wrong. The first iPhone couldn't even do MMS. You couldn't send a picture message in 2007 on an iPhone. Nokia's phone had been doing that for years. But Nokia made a catastrophic mistake that brilliant engineers make all the time. They judged the iPhone on what it was, not on what it could become. They optimized for the present. Apple was building for the future. Here is the part nobody talks about. And this is the real reason Nokia died. It wasn't the iPhone that killed Nokia. It was fear. Internal, cultural, paralyzing fear inside Nokia itself. See, Nokia actually had touchscreen smartphone prototypes in the early 2000s. They were working on app ecosystems before Apple. Some internal teams knew the future was coming. But here is what inside a company worth $250 billion. Nobody wants to be the person who beats wrong. Nobody wants to challenge the boss. Nobody wants to cannibalize the product that's making billions. Researchers who studied Nokia's collapse interviewed dozens of former executives and engineers. What they found was shocking. Middle managers were lying to senior leadership. They were giving optimistic reports about software timelines because they were terrified of delivering bad news. The CEO didn't know how broken the software was. The engineers knew but didn't say. And the people in between were just trying to survive politically. This has a name. Organizational psychologists call it psychological unsafety. When people are too scared to tell the truth, companies go blind. Nokia didn't just miss the smartphone revolution, they saw it coming and flinched. By 2010, the writing was on the wall. Android was exploding. The App Store had hundreds of thousands of apps, and Nokia was still pushing Symbian, an operating system so outdated that developers hated building for it. Then came one of the most controversial decisions in corporate history. In 2011, Nokia's new CEO, Stephen Elop, who came from Microsoft, sent an internal memo to all employees. He compared Nokia to a man standing on a burning oil platform. I have learned that we too are standing on a burning platform. Elop announced Nokia would abandon Symbian and go all in on Microsoft's Windows Phone. And the internet lost its mind because the moment he announced they were stopping Symbian, customers stopped buying Nokia phones immediately. Why would you buy a phone on a dying platform? Nokia had just publicly set fire to their only life raft before the new one arrived. Sales cratered, market share evaporated, and in 2013, Microsoft bought Nokia's phone division for $7.2 billion. 2 years later, Microsoft wrote off $7.6 billion on that deal, essentially admitting that the entire thing was worth less than nothing. Nokia, the company that was once worth more than Finland itself, sold for parts. Here is what I keep coming back to. Nokia wasn't stupid. They had brilliant engineers, massive resources, global distribution. They saw the threat. But they confused being technically capable with being strategically bold. They could build great hardware, but they built a culture where the truth was dangerous. And in business, a culture where the truth is dangerous is a company on a countdown timer. Google, Amazon, Tesla, the companies that survived disruption all share one thing. They were willing to destroy their own business models before someone else did. Nokia wasn't willing to hurt today's profits to protect tomorrow's survival. And the saddest part, the engineers knew, the researchers knew, even some executives knew. But knowing something and having the courage to act on it inside a political organization, those are two completely different skills. One last thing, because I love a story that doesn't end where you think it does. Nokia still exists. They sold their phone division, yes, but the rest of Nokia pivoted to network infrastructure, the technology that powers 5G towers around the world. Nokia today is a multi-billion-dollar company again. They are literally building the backbone of the internet. They didn't die, they transformed, which maybe is the real lesson. Nokia the phone company died because it couldn't change, but Nokia the company survived because eventually it did. The question for every company, and honestly every person, isn't whether disruption is coming, it's whether you will flinch when it does. If this made you think of a company going through the same thing right now, drop in the comments. I read every single one.